Test 1, 2, test. Test 1, 2, test.
No, what else do you want?
Test 1, 2, test.
Call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown? Mrs. Mitchell? Here. Mrs. Ruth?
Here.
Mr. Sawalish?
Here.
Mrs. Walters?
Here.
Mrs. Galbraith is here. Mr. Albrecht?
Here. Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bill.
Nelson, is it? Yeah, I was wondering if we can bump up public comment to just after action item number 7, after the public hearing.
Board okay with that? Any objection? Okay.
Do you want the mission statement?
So we'll move public comment up to right before discussion topics. Yes. Oh, yes. Mission statement, please.
Our mission is to empower each student to positively impact the world for a bright new future
Thank you.
and to be on time.
So just as we announced, we're going to move public comment up until after action item 7A. If you have any, if anyone has a public comment form they haven't turned in yet, if you could do so. Okay. So the first item tonight, we have the public hearing on the to extend the debt limit extension from 20 years to 30 years. And we need a motion to open the public hearing. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
And this is just a voice vote. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So with that, we'll open up the public hearing, and first presenting is Tammy from PMA.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Greetings on behalf of Bob Lewis. I know you're aware he wasn't able to be here tonight, but he and I work very closely at PMA, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to provide some context for everyone as you are having your public hearing this evening. Just to start, wanted to provide some comments as it relates to the development of a capital improvement plan, which the district has been working on. At this time, the superintendent's facility committee has recommended a $109 million capital plan, although I would highlight that the board is still in the process of reviewing the facility committee's recommendation, has not voted to approve this plan or any other type of capital plan. Additionally, the superintendent's finance committee has recommended that any capital plan should not increase the annual debt levy or the amount of annual property taxes the district collects to make its annual bond and interest payments, and that the district should finance the bonds over a period of 30 years if possible. So why the special legislation that's being discussed tonight? So there are various provisions under Illinois law that enable school districts to borrow money for capital projects. But within those details, it also limits the payback period for those borrowings to no more than 20 years. So the district has asked its local representatives and its senator in the General Assembly to sponsor legislation this spring that would enable the district to pay its bonds back over a period of not to exceed 30 years. And this would accomplish a couple things. Number one, it would enable the district to eventually lower that annual bond and interest tax levy. It's currently about $12 million per year. So it would have the opportunity to lower that payment. And I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. And also, it would more equitably distribute the property tax burden for these capital projects, both for property owners now and future taxpayers as well. But I want to reiterate that the board at this time has not adopted a resolution to call for a referendum, and it is considering, though, a question on the ballot this November. So is there precedence for this type of exception? And the short answer is yes. And we've provided you with a list of some school districts and community colleges over the last several years that have been granted exemptions from that 20-year limit. So we've listed several there for you that have had a 30-year exemption, and then there are some that requested 25-year exemptions. And I'd also add that there are other units of government in Illinois that statutorily can sell debt for a period of longer than 20 years. For example, park districts automatically have a 25-year payback under the law. And the Illinois Debt Reform Act also allows alternate revenue bonds, which are another type of financing different units of government enter into in Illinois. Those can go out as long as 40 years. So it's not uncommon to have financings that would go out as long as I said, 25, 30, or even 40 years in the state. So wanted to show you a picture. This is looking at that $109 million conceptual plan with a 20-year referendum payback. So in this scenario, what you can see are different colored bars, and the bars on the left side of the page going for the first 6 years or so show you that the district's payments that are in place right now are, like I said, about $12 million per year. With a 20-year payback, in about 6 years, that payment would drop from 12 million to about 11.5 million. Now, with a 30-year referendum payback, the district would be able to drop that $12 million payment in about 6 years to $10 million. So a more significant reduction simply because the payment term is longer from 20 years versus 30 years. So what does this really mean kind of on a practical basis for an individual homeowner within the district? So based on our research, the median home value in the district is approximately $160,000. And if the district had that 30-year payback, it would lower property tax bills for that median homeowner for about $100 in levy year 2026, or property tax bills payable in calendar year 2027. So this is really analogous to someone taking out a mortgage on his or her home. So you have the option maybe to do a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage, and you might make that individual decision that you want your monthly payments to be lower, but you understand that over time, your interest cost will be greater because it's a longer term. It's the same concept here. So by being able to go from a 20-year payback to a 30-year payback, the annual payment the district will make will be less, but its interest cost will be larger over time. And we calculate that that difference by going from 20 years to 30 years is about $20 million. Another piece of the special legislation relates to the district's debt margin, or we also call the debt limit. So every school district in the state of Illinois is subject to a statutory debt margin calculation. And it's based on two important variables. One is the equalized assessed value, or the tax base of the school district. And it also factors in the amount of debt that it has outstanding at this time. Principal only. It does not factor in interest. When we do that calculation, the district's debt limit calculation right now is approximately $64.4 million. So with a project scope potentially of $109 million, as you can see, there's a difference between those two numbers. So the special legislation that the district is seeking would also request an exemption for the bonds to exceed the current legal debt margin of the $64.4 million. And there's also precedents here. Many school districts have received a similar debt limit exceptions over time. And those are my comments. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So, are there any questions?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Are there any
I
questions?
I didn't know if you were taking questions or not.
I had one question for you, just to understand, if you go back 2 slides,
Sure.
I think it was. Our current debt limit is 12 million. So it runs off at 2025. So in 2026, that's why it would drop. So everybody understands we're at 12 million now, no matter what.
Right.
And as soon as that
Correct.
is extinguished, then we would.
Correct. That's right.
But that's not our debt limit. That's our current bond. That's our
Yes.
current principal and interest payment is at 12 million. And what we're proposing is that would come down to 10 million in aggregate after levy year 2026.
Well, let's kind of stay right there on that conversation. So with a 20-year, so right now we're roughly paying, like Bill said, on our debt about $12 million a year. That's going to go out so many years.
Mhm.
And it was recommended by the finance committee that we do not pay more than what we're paying on our debt if we were to acquire the 30-year or any finance period.
Right.
Okay.
The annual payment, you mean,
Annual
right?
payment.
Right.
So as a result, we look to stretch it out to try to maintain that or to maintain that level or below. So do you have a slide up there to show 20 years?
Yes,
Okay.
that's 20 years.
And forgive me for my headlights
That's
going a little
okay.
dim
That's
here.
okay.
So what is the debt showing that for the majority of it? What's the debt?
You're
Yeah,
looking for where
Our
the,
debt, what we would be paying on that debt for 20 years.
sure. So you can see, if you look at the left side of the page where the bars are a
Sure.
little bit higher, so
Sure.
that represents $12 million of payments
Right.
for roughly 6 years. And then the drop starts and it drops to about 11.5 million. And that's a 20-year
Case in
financing.
point. So even with that, 20 years, we still will not be paying more than what we're
Correct.
paying right now.
The annual payment would be the
And
same or
with the
less.
30 years, it'll drop down substantially. And as my colleague said, we're paying currently paying about $12 million towards our debt right now,
Yes.
which is going to drop off the table in another, I don't know, 6-7 years or whatever. And then it goes down to about 2 or 3 million for the remaining of the debt that we have of the $64 million.
Yes.
So I just want to share that again, even for some reason, if we don't acquire the 30-year debt, even at 20 years, it would still be kind of where we are right now as far
Yeah.
as paying the debt.
Correct.
Okay.
Annual payments, that's right.
A little room and a little borrowing power.
Right, yeah.
Yes,
Can
sure.
you just you want to make that statement that one of the benefits of going
you
out
can go
30
ahead.
years and lowering our payment
Sure.
gives future boards more flexibility in out years if something comes up than being kind of borrowed to our limit. So
Comment too was made that we want to maintain that debt, but there's some other components as far as going out 30 years that will benefit the district.
yes.
He said. Okay.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will have,
President, sorry,
yes,
the questions, it says it's open public hearing. Is that what you're getting ready to do now? Or
Yes.
was that the end of it right there?
no. This
Okay,
is-
so the
we're gonna
public-
Open up for public comment.
Should she remain up there or no? Or,
I think
Counsel? Okay,
if there's questions.
as opposed to, until a period is over.
So at this time, we'll have public comment on the debt term limit extension only. Is there anyone here for public comment?
I've got a couple of points that I want to make, but I don't think I should be limited by just the debt and certain
But we-
extent. I've got
Two different public comments.
We have two different public
to
comments.
understand that, but I've got questions for her. And I just want to make sure it fits the agenda. Is that okay?
Well, I think you'd have 5 minutes to ask questions, and then public comment, you'd have ordinarily 5 minutes. Okay, and I think if you would ask all of your questions and then allow her to respond instead of it being a back and forth, I prefer that.
I need the slides back up there. I need the slides. I'd like to go back to the slide that pertains to the average median home value in the district.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Young, could you please come up to the podium so that you can be heard on?
Yes, I've got, okay.
No, median income it starts.
At the top, it said that it was an estimate.
Here,
Yeah, right there, right there. Now, here in this slide, it says the median home value in the district. So you're talking about the entire Crete Monee School District because it includes 4 communities. And you said that it was about $160,000. And the second paragraph says that his estimated property tax bills will be about $100 lower, according to your research. In that research, did you happen to talk with the Will County assessor?
I have not spoken with the Will County assessor. Are you making your comment because you have thoughts about what the property values of the district will be?
Yes, and the increase in property taxes, because I remember years ago when we built a new high school, this very same question came up, and the tax bills did not go lower.
So you know what, I think what would have added a little bit more clarity to this, regardless of what the assessment is,
Mhm.
what everyone is going to pay towards the debt will be the same. Is that a correct statement? Right, this is just the debt portion. This is not the other leavening bodies that's going to come after you.
Understand that.
Okay,
But my point is that how can we estimate that it's going to be lower? If there's the potential the property value can increase.
again, I don't think it has anything to do with the value. It's just the money we borrow.
It's only 12 million.
It's the amortization.
I understand that, but the way it's written is that the medium home value right now, correct, is $160,000. So suppose it was $230,000 next week.
Sure. It's
Okay.
because it's assuming that annual debt payment's going to drop from $12 million to $10 million.
Okay, but that's,
So the payment of the district, the debt service payment will drop by $2 million. So that's what's built into that assumption, that a property tax bill, by going from a 20-year to a 30-year payback, you would see a drop in levy year 26, simply because the debt payment's dropping by $2 million per year.
okay.
See, and that's what clearly need to be
Okay.
communicated
Well, that's
to the
my point.
taxpayers.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah, that's my point.
because your
That-
taxes could go up $2,000 more.
Yeah.
But not the debt. That's fixed in.
And that's my point. It needs to be a little bit more clarification, which brings me into my second question. I don't see our district fiscal officer present, Mr. Sherman.
He's out with a personal matter.
Okay. I would think out of respect, what I thought was going to be a committee of the whole, had I not looked at the boards, had I not looked at the school district website, I wouldn't have not known that this was a special meeting. Because normally the second Tuesday of the month is the committee of the whole, where we discuss things like this. I would think that since the district's primary fiscal officer was not going to be present during this presentation, we would have delayed this until he was present. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board or any of the public comment on the public hearing? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next up, we have an action item. Can I get a motion to approve amended resolution for a 30-year fund borrowing extension?
So moved.
Second.
And can I have the secretary read the resolution?
Resolution expressing support for legislation authorizing a 30-year repayment period for bonds issued by Community Unit School District Number 201U, Will County, Illinois, for capital improvements and excluding said bonds from outstanding debt for the purposes of the statutory debt limit of said school district. Whereas the Board of Education, known as the Board of Community Unit School District Number 201U, Will County, Illinois, known as the district, is in the process of establishing a capital improvement plan, known as the plan. And whereas pursuant to the plan, the district will issue bonds, known as the bonds, to finance capital improvements to buildings and facilities throughout the district, known as the projects. And whereas the issuance of the bonds will be conditioned on the approval by voters of the district at a referendum held on or after November 3, 2020. And whereas the board has determined and does hereby determine the useful life of such buildings and facilities as improved by the projects will not be less than 30 years. And whereas, subject to voter approval, the district may issue the bonds under Article 19 of the School Code, provided, however, the bonds must be repaid within 20 years. And whereas for certain school districts, the General Assembly has enacted and the governor has approved legislation authorizing bond repayment periods in excess of 20 years. And whereas the board had further determined and does hereby further determine that it is necessary and desirable to pursue legislation authorizing a repayment period not to exceed 30 years for the bonds and excluding the bonds from outstanding debt for purposes of statutory debt limit. And whereas such legislation would allow the district to allocate a portion of the tax burden associated with such bonds to future taxpayers who will benefit from and enjoy the use of the district's buildings and facilities as improved by the projects. Now therefore be it, and it is hereby resolved that the board hereby expresses support for legislation authorizing a 30-year repayment period for the bonds and excluding the bonds from outstanding debt for purposes of statutory debt limit, adopted March 10, 2020.
There any question? Any questions or comments on the resolution? Okay, hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mrs. Root?
Aye.
Mr. Sawalish?
Aye.
Mrs. Walters?
Aye.
Mrs. Galbraith is an aye. Mr. Albrecht?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, next up we will have general public comment. Do I have all of the public comment forms? Anybody who's not turned one in? Okay, first public comment I have is from Christy Grismer. The topic is Principal of Monee Elementary, Mrs. Jones.
Hi, School Board and Superintendent. My name is Christy Grismer. I'm a parent over at Monee Elementary. I'm writing to you on behalf of the recent appeal request of Mrs. Joanne Jones, Monee Elementary Principal. I actually am a Crete Monee graduate myself, but my husband and I never once thought that we would send our son through this school district. However, the school that Mrs. Jones has created is an elementary school I was proud to send my son to. Mrs. Jones has led Monee Elementary to be one of the top schools in this district. Through the support of Mrs. Jones, my son has excelled through his 3 years at Monee Elementary and is well beyond grade level for all of the subjects. I have never seen a principal be so involved in creating a caring and inclusive environment for every single one of the children. The experience I'm about to tell you about, I believe, truly depicts the character of Mrs. Jones. At one of my son's annual IEP meetings, Mrs. Jones was out horribly sick from school, but still wanted to be a part of the important meeting that was being held. She, being the amazing principal that she is, made sure that the staff teleconferenced her in for the length of my son's IEP meeting so that she could be involved and know firsthand what was going on. To me, that was going above and beyond what was expected of her. That is exactly the type of person Mrs. Jones is and the type of principal that I want my son to have. Mrs. Jones has been within this district for 24 years, a lifetime of work. As you already know, Mrs. Jones was set to retire at the end of this school year. A retirement that was to be spent with her husband and her family. A retirement plan that changed when her husband passed away suddenly in 2018. An unexpected life-altering event that changed how her retirement years would look. Mrs. Jones has only requested for her position to be extended by 2 years so that she is able to still provide for herself and her family, or to find another position within the district that she has dedicated most of her life to. Since news of this has come out in the last few weeks, all I have heard is great praise for a wonderful principal and outrage that we cannot support our own for an additional 2 years through such a trying time. All I am asking you today is to take this information into consideration and please reconsider the hasty decisions that have seemed to be been made over the past couple of weeks. A person like Mrs. Jones deserves our support and kindness, and I, as a parent, would love to see her stay at Monee Elementary. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, I have Heather Scott. The topic is Mrs. Jones.
Hello, good evening. This is the first time I've done this before. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's here. It's been a real insight to come to a board meeting and see how hard everyone works. And I'm relatively new. My daughter has been in the public school for about 3 years. She attended the ELC, and she's been at Monee for, it will be 2 years at the end of this year. And my son is currently at the ELC. And I love this district. I was on the PTO of the ELC, and I got to know some of the teachers, and it just felt like a family. And when we attended Monee Elementary, when I had a choice, I knew for sure that she was going to be going there because of the family feel that I received there as well. Obviously, I'm here also to talk about Mrs. Jones. I have been so impressed with the school and with this principal. And when it came to my attention, the situation where she was going to retire and then try to have it extended because of the loss of her husband, it really touched my heart, just as a parent, as a member of a family, as a daughter, as a granddaughter. And so that is why I chose to bring all 4 of my kids to here today. And I know that your decisions are not made hastily. I know that they are considered. I can tell that just by this meeting today. But I really feel like we need to be setting an example, just like it says in the new initiative about making community and family important, and we want to be unified. And I just don't feel like, I'm not feeling the unity in a school that had all the teachers and staff petition for her to stay. So I don't understand. And I think maybe it's just lack of transparency, or maybe a lack of just not being as involved. This is the first meeting like this I've come to. But I just wanted to come and show my support for this woman who has dedicated so much of her time, like Christy was able to exemplify in her example that she gave, and built so much that I am so proud that my child gets to attend. And I would just urge you to take these thoughts and these words to reconsider a position for her within this district, and support her. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I would say, given that we are at 6 o'clock. Yeah, no, 'cause it's still on standard time with it. But if we were to have more public comment come in after we have our discussion topics, I'd be open to hearing it. So, any objection? Oh, I'm saying, if we have, since it's only 6 o'clock, if we had more public comment come in after we have our discussion topics, when it ordinarily falls on the agenda, I'm open to having that more public comment. Yeah. So, okay.
President Albert, we didn't hear that back here.
I'm sorry.
Board members heard, but we didn't hear that back here.
So I'm suggesting that given it's only 6 o'clock, and that if others come in and would like to make public comment, we would continue to be able to make that available after our discussion items at the normal agenda item number 9.
And the board agrees?
Yes.
What about those that are out here that might have a question? Would they be considered also? Those that's already submitted and didn't turn in a form? Is that a possibility also?
Absolutely.
Okay, turn it up.
Do you have a form? I have to fill out we'll take our time. Fill out a form.
So they know.
Yeah, and I'm gonna wait to add the auditor's report.
Okay,
Is that okay?
that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it might be answered.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll, speak at, during normal public comment. Okay, so I'll turn it over to the superintendent. Well, hold on. I'll turn it over to the superintendent for discussion topics.
Great, thank you. Our first item A is our business item, and that is our auditor's report. With us this evening, we have Susan Jones from the paper. She's our auditor that came in. So we invited her this evening to come and share the audit.
Good evening, everybody. So as part of our audit this year, we issue 4 deliverables. The first one is the annual financial report, which is presented in accordance with the regulatory basis of accounting, and that was filed with ISB, and the district did receive a review rating. The next deliverable we issue is also referred to as the annual financial report, but those financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, or people refer to it as US GAAP. The district received an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance the district can receive. In addition to those reports, we also issue 2 letters. The first is a required communications letter, and I want to say that all these deliverables have been presented in the board package. But one of the 2 letters that we issue is a required communications letter, and that discusses various items. A couple of that I want to highlight. It talks about that our audit was executed in accordance with government auditing standards and also generally accepted auditing standards. And as part of our executing our audit, we do consider the internal controls of the district. And based on that understanding that we gained, we issued a separate letter that identified various material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, control deficiencies, on recommendations of improvement to the internal controls of the district. The next letter we issue is the letter that has all those specific material weaknesses, significant deficiencies identified, and is part of the audit materials and the materials that you received. Ken Surma has issued a letter, and he has plans in place to correct a lot of those deficiencies. The 2 primary prongs being reorganization of the business office, the finance department, as well as working with some consultants from Skyward to correct some of the general ledger challenges that the district is having. In addition, as part of our required communications letter, we are supposed to disclose to the Board of Education any differences we identified as part of our audit process that were not recorded, and any differences that we identified were recorded in the financial statements that are presented in these reports. There's also in the letter a series of new government accounting standards that are going to impact the district over the next couple of years. The most significant one being GASB 84 related to fiduciary activities. And basically what's going to happen is student activities in the current year report is presented outside of the district's financial statement. So the cash isn't included with the district's cash. Next year, student activity funds will be included in the general fund of the district. Does anybody have any questions? The cash related to student activities and clubs.
We can use those funds for,
You still have to use them for the particular clubs in which the money
you
was
do.
raised, but that cash now is going to be included in the general fund of the district or the educational account. It's just a new kind of financial reporting presentation. Currently, in this year, in the annual financial report, it's its own separate statement.
Does that help assure more accountability for those funds?
There's still going to be, well, the district is in the process of improving the tracking of that outside of the SCASB statement. So this is more just a financial reporting, but there, in the management letter, we did identify some improvements to that tracking that can be done with regard to student activities.
And outside of, you noted the deficiency around the reorganization of the finance department and getting more training with Skyward. Were there any other deficiencies, or was that the primary? Is that something I think the board is already aware of?
So there are in our, those are just management's plans to correct a series of deficiencies that were identified.
Okay.
I guess the largest deficiencies that were included in the management letter are referred to as material weaknesses. Those were related to reconciliations of all significant balance sheet accounts, primarily cash. The cash reconciliations were not done throughout the fiscal year. Those need to be done on a monthly and a timely basis, prepared by someone and then independent reviewed by someone and reconciled to the general ledger. So that was one of the significant. The other ones related to kind of the IDEA and Title I grants, just more business office involvement in the oversight of those funds. There were some funds related to those grants that could have been used, and they get carried over, so they're not wasted, but just oversight to make sure those funds are being reconciled and tracked and submitted for reimbursement on a timely basis.
Okay. And that was also presented as part of our staffing plan to address that, correct? Okay.
I do have another. Go ahead. Ladies first.
I just have one question. Is this your second year doing our audit?
That's one of my
The third year.
questions.
Okay, so when you talked about the cash reconciliations not being done on a timely basis, did we do them the first 2 years correctly and we fell off this year, or is that something that we?
No, it's been a
we did
repeat.
improvement
It's been a repeat finding the last several years.
Okay, so it's a continuing problem that hopefully we've.
Yeah, and part of it has to do with the system issues, and that's why the business office is getting Skyward involved, because there's some technology issues that make it a little bit more cumbersome and challenging to do those reconciliations on a timely basis, but that's not an excuse for not still doing them on a timely monthly basis.
So none of them were done monthly?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. You took all of my questions. Okay. So you've been with the district for 2 years?
This was our third audit.
Okay, so third year. So we're finding findings in here from 17, fiscal year 18, fiscal year 19, fiscal year.
I would say the two primary material weaknesses related to segregation of duties and the bank reconciliations have been repeat findings for the last couple of years.
Okay. And one of the big findings that your firm found with being our auditor is the reconciliation process. That's the biggest thing you possibly found, right? That's been an issue here. We still
Yes.
haven't got our hands on it. I see some corrective actions that came out of last year. Do we have a grasp on that process, in your opinion?
You have a plan to get a grasp on it, but I don't think currently it's fixed.
Okay, with that being said, by law, you are to conduct an audit on our school district financial process here every year, annually, right? And when is that done? Year-end process, June 30th? at
So
end of
the
fiscal year?
audit is done as of the end of your fiscal year, June 30th. We usually come in to do the field work in October, November frame because the reconciliations for a lot of the significant account balance sheet accounts were not done on a timely basis. The audit took extra time and we didn't really finish till February.
So I guess this question could be to you, Dr. Coglanese. You come on an annual basis. We're having these issues. We're trying to correct these issues with our action plan, so on and so forth. So what are we doing to ensure we don't want to have the problems and you identify it on a yearly basis when we find out about these problems? I know we're not going to solve everything. If we did, we wouldn't need you. So, but from the time you come on a yearly basis and we have issues. So when are we trying to catch these problems? What checks and balances do we have to say, you know what, we are doing well. Our reconciliation process is being more robust in nature.
So we are looking at the action plan. It's included in your packet. We're starting on page 87, but to address this immediately, we are going to be working with a third-party consultant to come in and help design and work with the procedures for closeout at the end of each month and making sure that we're getting those reconciled immediately. And we also have a new staffing plan to help address that as well.
Thank you. This is my last question. Our financial profile, we've been a little bit slow in the process of getting what's needed and going forward and getting the information to the state so we can, in fact, have a financial profile that's being profiled by the state for us. So at some point, do you let the district know, hey, are you requesting, how rigorous are you requesting the information to gather the information to put your case together to say, here, this is your financial profile, because it's you that give us our financial profile, basically the information, and this is what it should look like, right? And then it ultimately goes to the state, right? Is that a correct statement?
So for the first 2 years, we were the auditors. The audit was not complete to file the AFR with ISB in order for ISB to grant you a rating. This year, the AFR was filed for ISB to provide the district with a financial profile in which they received a review rating, which is the second highest out of 4 categories that the district could receive. But we start the audit in October, November, and we're available to the district throughout the year for questions and things like that. Again, until the audit information is available for us to audit, we can't really execute the audit until we have, cash reconciliations and balance sheet reconciliations. But throughout the audit process, we do involve the superintendent and Ken and request the information. And as part of this year's audit, there was a consultant brought in to help get those reconciliations done so that the district could meet the timeline in order to get a rating and a profile from ISB, and that was accomplished this year. There was a lot of work on both ends to accomplish that this year.
But at the end of your audit, for our district, you pretty much have enough information to pretty much say this is what our financial profile.
Well, we fill out the AFR, which is a regulatory statement that ISB mandates the district complete and get an opinion from an audit firm. And so, yes, we do that, and then the district files it with ISB.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, despite the issues with the reconciliation that you found and that we have a plan to address, still with the overall audit received an unmodified opinion, which
Yes.
is the highest
Level
opinion.
assurance
Okay.
that the district could receive.
Okay, thank you.
And not to go into too much detail, but the AFR is on the regulatory basis, which is what's filed with ISB. And on a regulatory basis, you received an unmodified opinion. And then the AFR that's done in accordance with GAAP, you received an unmodified opinion.
Let me, can I sneak in real quick?
I'm sorry.
Can
go
I
ahead.
sneak in real quick and let me end my thing because while it's still fresh in my mind, you said we are, from the information you have, because it's still not posted. I haven't seen it on the state website, our financial profile, right? It's not posted.
Well, the state goes through a process. Once we submit to the state, they create a database and they have their own process.
Because I've seen, you said we are review, financial profile is review, where
So
up
in the,
high 3 point what? Do you know
I
what
think it
the
was
number?
3.25.
But
So,
it's on the low end.
so in the AFR, when you put in all the numbers, it automatically kind of generates what the profile score is, but ISB has to formally bless it after you submit it and make sure that, you know, it includes everything, everything was filled out in the proper buckets and that kind of thing.
And sometimes you won't see those reports from the state until like March or April, then they ask you to go and verify it again.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted the number review where at in that range. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brenda.
I just got a comment, and because what we're looking at is what the findings. Some of the findings to me are really requires action on our part to make sure that this is not a repeat of process. And so when I look at what the findings are, which some of it is oversight in addition to reconciliation and how we manage that function, it seems to me that we would take the corrective action plan, and that plan should be something that moves itself to accountability to the finance department to make sure that this is not a repeat experience for us, and that what has been recommended by the audit, and the reason that we have an audit and get this information is so that we actually put into action what has been recommended by the auditors, because there's also reconciliation, proof of cash, there's reporting levels to make sure that you do have checks and balances, and so that you're not at risk for error in the reporting processes. And so I would say that we take these findings and use those, submit them to Ken as a working document so that when we get to the end of the year and we're about to move toward these processes, these will not be our issues.
That is the goal. And we have a working project sheet that we have with check-in dates that Mr. Serban and I will be working for probably on a weekly basis to make sure that these pieces are being done, especially around month-end reconciliation.
Because I think for the board, I'm just speaking for me, that would be something that we would look at in terms of accountability to make sure that that's not our issue and that we don't revisit, the issues that we revisited on this plan year.
Correct. And I think some of the things that are on the personnel report, for example, the grant manager that we were talking about, we've had that in the district before. So we're bringing that position back in order to have that direct oversight. It has been there. We just have never, put that position in place. So that would be one of them. And then we have some other personnel changes that we are looking to do to make sure that those processes and procedures are in place. In fact, we're also going through and putting together documented training manuals on all of these processes with Skyward, so that regardless of who's here 1 year from now, 10 years from now, they are using a training manual to make sure that we've got these consistencies in place. So when staff does turn over and things get, new people come in, that those processes are being honored.
So real quick on that, if they're available to us, and we have someone new in there now, and it's March, that sometime in June or July, wouldn't we want them to come in? That way we're 2 months or 3 months ahead of the audit so that we're on track, so there's no delays.
Correct.
Because 17 and 18, we didn't meet the timeline, and this year I think we made it probably within the hours. But at least if we're on pace, if we're making mistakes or things aren't done right, then we can correct them and we're ready for the audit.
Right. So what we're doing right now is going back to the reconciliations of 2019, July, August, September, and we're going back and closing those out quickly so that we can have the auditor back in June or July and have things in a better shape so it doesn't take so long.
All right, as long as we're on that, that's good. I mean, if we can utilize their service, we might as well.
Yes, they have really been outstanding partners with us, so we appreciate them.
Thank you.
Board President, I think Bill alluded to this as well as Board Member Mitchell. because we have had somewhat of a systemic issue with these finance processes, can we have some type of accelerated porosity, however you want to say it, or frequency on where we are with this as opposed to waiting till the end of the year, whatever? You have an action plan every month or so, update the board in some short version or something, or every 2 months, whatever the frequency is.
That's very doable. We can do that
Yeah, so we can know, hey, we having problems, we haven't met our expectations in this particular line item, so on and so forth, however you deem and the president deem necessary. But I would like to know, as a board member, just kind of where we are as opposed to at the end of the year.
I agree wholeheartedly.
I agree with
Yes.
Mr. Brown also, and I just have two quick questions, and I might have missed the answer to this one. We know we had a Skyward issue. Is that all better? Or are we still working on it, or have we identified everything that's being worked on? Where does that stand?
Skyward has come in. They were here for about a week. Our staff absolutely was just really well received from Skyward, and they've done a lot of work. We're going to have them back to do some more Skyward work with us, because what we're doing is we're working with them to start creating training manuals now.
Okay,
with them.
but are the issues that we had then user issues, or are they Skyward issues?
Probably
or
both.
Okay,
Both.
so what I'm asking is, did we identify the Skyward
Yes,
issues?
we did.
And they're fixed or in the process of being fixed?
Yes.
Okay,
It's also identifying what other programs are in Skyward that we
Okay.
may not have been aware of that we can actually use better, and then making sure that we're doing the right processes as we're putting information in.
okay, and my second thing is, seeing is that I have 40 years background on this, the training manuals.
Mhm.
Make sure they get updated. If something changes, get that manual off the shelf and fix that page, because otherwise 10 years down the road, when somebody goes to use that, if it's never been updated, doesn't do them any good, because you know things are going to change.
Correct.
So just a reminder, maybe in your schedule of things, that we make sure that at least yearly or every 6 months or something, or the minute there's a change in Skyward or our process, that those
Those are being
training
updated.
manuals are
Yeah.
updated, because otherwise they're useless.
I think you're right, because I think you'd mentioned in the next couple of years, you're gonna have changes, right?
Yeah, with regard to various GASB statements, but that not necessarily, that's a more of a financial reporting versus a routine transaction kind of thing.
Do you know any, Dr. Coglanis or our auditor here, do you know, going back to our state profile, I know we have an issue with our budget per se. That's where we probably got hit. Cash on hand, was that another number that kind of drove us down?
I think the
Cash on
debt,
hand?
the debt and the cash.
The debt, pretty much, the long-term debt, that's weighted very low. Okay, so I don't think that's been there forever. We have still obtained a recognition status with a somewhat high debt. So because it's just weighted very low, but our fund balance, I think we've been doing pretty good with that. We're gonna get hit again this May probably, or June. But our cash on hand, if you can get that back to me, I want to know what our cash on hand, do we have enough cash on hand
And there was,
to last us 6 months?
I don't have that number,
That's
that
probably what we-
calculation in front of me, but
Okay. Because even though I don't know, you say 3.2 or whatever, I wonder what
there
drove
was
us
in
down.
the general fund and the O&M fund, there was deficit spending in the general fund and the O&M fund. But the transportation fund had a positive, revenues in excess of expenditures this year.
Okay, but that's captured under our expenditures and revenues, which is our deficit, basically that ratio is
Mhm.
going to give us our deficit. But I was just wanting to know where our cash on hand is.
I can get that
I bet
information.
that kind of, I'm curious to see. Did it bring us down, and where are we? 60 days, 80, I hope we're not too far away from 180 days. But something brought us down, and I want to know what those two categories, possibly three,
We'll have to get her.
okay? I'm curious. If you can locate that, okay.
Okay, are there any other questions from Ms. Jones? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is 8B. Can we, one of the issues we're going to talk about coming up here are board agreements, and side conversations really hurt the active participation of everyone. So if we could turn it over to Dr. Coglani's for dome recommendations.
All right, for dome recommendations, as you recall, last month, the discussion was tabled, or a vote was tabled for that, to allow Mr. Brown, who also serves on the facility committee, to share some additional information with the committee for them to review. At that time of the meeting, Mr. Brown shared a few items, the cost evaluation of the dome. He took a look at some of the figures that were there. There was an older version that actually combined some of the costs of the estimated projects that merged them between the sixth grade center and the dome. So we pulled those out so that it was a little bit clearer. The second item was that he was able to share some older plans that were created by the architect's DLA, showing the construction of a new elementary school that actually included the dome. So he shared those with the committee. And he also shared the 10-year life safety survey assessment that was created in June 2013. So all these items we had a chance to take a look at and review at length. Dave Patton, our architect, was there at the meeting. And some of the items that he shared in addition was really looking at the cost of repairing the dome versus actually building a new gym. So as we know, the dome is basically a gym. So they were thinking, looking at the two, he estimated, repairing the dome, around 12 million versus a new gym with about 5.6 million. But I think this was the one piece that came out during the meeting that, I think no one was really aware of, was this, it's a newer Illinois administrative code that talks about these storm shelters. Storm shelters, as you know, with the playing field, with the tornadoes, any new construction needs to have something that can withstand, I think it's a category 5 and so forth. So whatever we would build, we would need to make sure that that would be able to construct that. Now, currently our dome would not be able to withstand a category 5. So in order to do that, there need to be much more building that needed to be done with that. Building a gym that could withstand a category 5 would be much easier to do in that regard. So that was a new piece of information that we hadn't really talked about before. We hadn't gotten to that kind of detail that Dave Patton did bring out. That certainly we did spend some time looking through. The team really looked and did a thorough discussion, reviewed all the materials, and was really appreciative of the time certainly that Mr. Brown put in to try to reevaluate some of these issues, and also pulling out some of the figures so that we could really take a look at what was clear for the numbers. But the committee went ahead and continued to recommend the demolition of the dome at that point. Some of the discussions that took place later on was just reviewing the contract, the proposal from Omega 3 of Elgin. That was October of 2018. That gave a cost of $1.238797 million to demolish the dome, and then they would also give us a credit back of $54,000 to include the dome as well. The abatement and the demolition would be about 4 months to do in its entirety. So even if we started in June, it was going to be some time to get all of that done. So I think that was basically some of the conversations that we had, going through that. So
this recommendation will come before the board for approval at next week's regular meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I would just, again, I'm not going to come before this board and plead for the savior of the dome. Might do it tomorrow, but not today. The dome, again, I see a lot of value in it. I know the numbers, maybe it's not indicative of the values that I see it as. I thought, as Dr. Coglany shared, was, for example, I believe it had reported or given to us information, at least the facilities committee, information about life safety issues for the dome itself was $2.3 million. And based on the 2013 survey, when in fact the entire, including the high school, the old sixth grade center, and the dome was $3.2 million. Now, how that $2.3 million was extrapolated out of that total value of 3.2 was beyond me. Okay, so, and also I think it was for the pipings too, another $2 million or something like that. That was just geared towards the dome. And total for both the dome and the high school was right around $2 million plus dollars. So I asked Ken, these numbers doesn't jive. And when he went back with the architect, and sure enough, it went down from 2.3 million based on 44,000 square feet of the dome, and it ended up being about $800,000. So it was almost $1.5 million difference in favor of not being an expenditure for the dome. So it was a lot of little things like that. Well, not little, but big, that caught my attention. But as this one was taken off, something else was put back on to bring the numbers up. So being said, I told Bill, I'm sorry, Bill, and thanks for standing in the gap for me. He did a good job when I wasn't at the facility committee. But I told Ken and Dr. Coglanese, I said, this is nothing to play with. Not saying that you guys play with these numbers. If you want the board to look at something and revisit this and look at it and say, make a decision to say yay or nay, we need our numbers tight. We need to have a story to tell the board, concise numbers to the best of your ability to present to us. And then we look at those numbers and we have make a real collective effort and a prudent effort to say yeah or nay. And I don't think it was there. So we need to fine tune that process moving forward, because again, it was very dynamic. How can you say this is what's required to get the dome up? These different tasks need to be done, these different enhancements. And then I say, okay, it doesn't cost this much. You're right. Take that one off. Let's put this one back on to bring the numbers up. Fire protection, for example, was never identified. I don't know how that ended up coming on the list after the fact. So we take $2 million off, and then we bring another $2 million back on. So look at it with a fine tooth comb, clear vision on what's needed moving forward in the building or whatever you're going to bring to the board to say, what, we recommend that this stay or this does not stay. And I don't think the numbers was right there up front. It was very dynamic in nature. It was moving. It was a moving target. Yeah, Ken confessed, and the architect confessed that they didn't know anything about the 2016 law that says all new school gymnasium moving forward. That it was a bill that Governor Quinn signed in 2014, and it went into law, I believe, in 15 or 16. It said all new gymnasium or any gymnasium that's going to be renovated has to be able to withstand a wind of 250 miles per hour, E5 tornado. So, whoa, so that added some cost too. So, that came out after the fact, and I understand that. He didn't know it, nobody knew it, but it came as an effort of looking more into it. So I don't know if you guys got a chance to see the drawing. Did you see the drawing with the dome attached? Bill did.
Mm-hmm.
You guys saw it too? And I understand later on that, some committees, members of the facility say, hey, I don't want an older building attached to a newer building. I get that. But again, I'm surprised that more people from the community, I thought the dome was an icon in the community. I was wrong, it appears, but I've been hearing some chatter. People have called me, people have met me in the community, say, man, please don't let them tear down the dome. But it's only a handful of people. I thought it was a lot more blue and gold people around here, but I don't know. I'll still fight until next week. I just want to tell you that.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions or comments on item B? And it'll be on next week's agenda for a vote. Okay. Okay.
Want to do the next item? This was just a discussion item if you have any questions, but we would like to recommend the renewing of the Miller Cooper auditor contract. And that will come to a vote next week.
No, I have a question, Nelson. Maybe you know this. I know there's a recommendation for how long to keep auditors and then change over. What is that time period? Do you have any idea? Is it like 3 years, 5 years? Because I know that.
I'm not sure I've heard that.
Okay, that's
I'm
come
not
up with
aware of
my
that.
board. Just because if somebody's around too long, then they're afraid that they just.
This is actually a new auditor for us.
Oh, this is a new. I thought Miller Cooper's
Well,
who.
this is their third year.
Oh, well, that's why. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, right. I was just wondering if there was a rule of thumb.
First year you and I were on the board.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I agree. I mean, I think there's some things that clearly the auditor before this was not catching. So.
Yeah, I just was curious if it was a rule of thumb.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay. Next up, item D.
Okay, Mrs. Perkins. E-learning. She's going to give a brief overview of where we're at in getting us ready for accepting a learning plan.
I see it. Yeah, good evening. So this is an overview. This is an overview of the plan that we have submitted to the board for approval, along with the resolution for next week. So as a reminder, e-learning days are for emergency days only. We need 5 hours of instruction, notification to our families, training for the staff and students, that we review with our bargaining units, that we have and ensure access and materials to our students, that we support our students with special needs, that we hold a public hearing, that it is adopted by the board, and then we send our verification to our regional office. This is the timeline that shows where we have met those requirements or going into next week where we will meet those requirements. Emergency day plans, again, this can be used for severe weather conditions, acts of God, or conditions outside of our control. This slide talks about the procedures. These are duplicate slides that have been presented before. This is new. This is the communication plan that e-learning days will be announced before the end of a school day. If the emergency does not allow for a decision to be made before the end of the day, we will go and use our traditional days. Our parents and families will be notified through school messenger, district website, social media, and email. Our K-5 students have practiced and used their Blizzard boards, and they will be available if an e-learning day is called. And then our 6-12 students and faculty will be reminded to take home their devices daily. Yes.
So if we don't call the day before the end of a school day, the next day would just be a normal snow day.
Correct.
Okay.
For attendance, teachers will turn in attendance for K-5 when those Blizzard boards come back to them. And then for students in 6-12, teachers will make sure that the Google Classroom assignment is posted by 9 a.m. Students will go in and fill in a Google form from 9 to noon for their attendance. And if we have any students unable to connect, they will work with their teachers the next day that we return for turning in those assignments. New, we have worked with our bargaining unit to discuss staff attendance. Teachers will be available at times from 9 to 3 to offer support throughout the day. We're working with other roles and making sure those supervisors are accountable for all staff attendance. And then any prearranged absences that went in before it was called an e-learning day, teachers will be able to forego those for e-learning purposes. And anyone on FMLA, we will continue to use the staff that is in place to support those students. Expectations for students is to complete the work, make sure they take home their devices. Our special ed students, teachers and staff will be working with those families and students to make sure that their goals are met through e-learning. We will provide the 800 number if there are any technology issues for students and families. And we will have, if anyone has any outage, those students will be allowed 3 days to turn in those assignments. We will distribute for success. We will look for a survey for our parents and educators and students after our first day of e-learning if we have to use it. And then we will make any revisions for implementation based on those results. Any questions? Yes.
Okay, so e-learning days, in my understanding, was more or less for extreme weather days, snow days, so we're not tacking them at the end of the year.
Correct.
So does that mean whoever makes that decision will want to make that, a little early in advance? Otherwise, we're going back to having a snow day, right?
Correct. We have the days are meant to use in lieu of so that we don't have to add extra days onto the calendar. So because K-5 students are not taking home their devices, we need to give teachers enough time to get things ready so that those packets can go home with those students.
So by next year, are we anticipating K-5 taking those home or not really?
We are in the process of talking with the technology department to see how that can happen.
So Dr. Carroll, do we have enough Chromebooks for everybody to take home?
We are 1-to-1. K-5 is just not taking those devices home.
And if they decide to take them home and someone makes, like Dr. Carroll makes a decision at 2 a.m. that the roads are bad, 30-mile-an-hour winds, everything's icy, we're going to shut everything down. If they take them home, then we can have an e-learning day at home.
Yes, correct. And we can revisit that language.
I'm saying
But
if,
we can
if they decide
revisit.
to take them home.
Yes, so if we move into K-5 taking.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I'm questioning.
Yeah, if we move next year, if we move into those students taking those devices home, then we can call it 2 a.m. because those devices are at home.
So like last year, we had the polar vortex. We had 3 days that were completely extreme. So if you know that ahead of time, we can at least use our e-learning days and try, not trial run, but run it through. And then by the end of next year, at least the kids start taking them home and then we can kind of be on the normal track, right? I just assume the e-learning days, you call it whatever time and they can stay at home.
That would be a perfect storm, yes, if we knew the days in advance like we did for the vortex.
I have a question. Is there any chance it can be approved this school year?
Yes, so that is why the resolution is coming to you next week, so that it will be approved for this school year. And we will submit it to the regional office. You approve it on Tuesday, the regional office will have it on Wednesday.
Have any idea of their timing? They'll do it fast, yeah. Right, that's what, okay.
That is actually why we expedited it to the board meeting, to get the public hearing done, to get it ready, and they waived it, so that we could do it early.
Is e-learning only applicable to inclement weather, or can it be applied to other situations? It was? No. More proactive. This is reactive in nature, but more proactive Like, can kids take courses online in some way, shape, or form right now, other than physically being here in the school?
It's for e-learning days are for emergency
That's what I'm saying.
days.
Can we call it something else and take advantage of it? I don't know. So do we have our, okay, that's a whole different ballgame. Whatever. Okay, well, I'm saying e-learning, you know what I'm saying? I'm saying, they take online courses or something. I don't know. Okay, well, yet to be talked about. Okay.
So I have a little question here.
Yes.
We did our practice in school.
Yes.
I have been contacted by people in the communities that are concerned that, number one, they don't have Wi-Fi or internet. And number two, no guarantee. We haven't tested our product in their homes, and many of them don't pick up. Like if I go to somebody's house, my phone doesn't always work.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get it to work. So what are you doing? I mean, if we end up with 5 days, that child then goes for 5 days and then has to make all that up. Or are we going to have a practice day where they actually practice it at home to see if we have an issue with a bunch of connectivity? Because you could have a lot of kids that are not going to be able to connect. And I'm concerned about that. That's not fair to them.
That is that could possibly happen. The practice day, like you stated, has happened. Sorry. The practice day that has happened was in school, again, under perfect conditions. And until we, weather that storm of, are we going to have connectivity if there is a storm? We just don't know until we get to that point.
But all the kids that have the Chromebooks now should currently be taking them home and using them because they use them for assignments
Daily
and
assignments,
stuff.
yes.
Right. So they should know whether or not they can connect to their Wi-Fi at home.
Right, but what if they end up at somebody else's house and they're stuck there and they don't? I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
that parents are very concerned about connectivity here.
I would imagine issues, right?
So I'm just throwing that out there so that you guys know that parents are asking about it. I think we should somehow figure out how to take these home and everybody test on their home and see if they can.
Well, on a daily basis, 6 through 12 take theirs home. So on a daily basis across all communities, those they have access we haven't heard any connectivity issues that are coming through. Maybe 1 or 2, but we have not had a problem across the communities, and they work with those daily. That would be the same thing that happens in the case of an emergency day. And we are doing a parent survey during parent-teacher conferences to look at what our connectivity looks like for our families in K-5. Any additional? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, board agreements. This my issue? Yep. Yeah. Here, please. So I thought it'd be a good idea, a couple of conversations we've had in the past couple of meetings, just kind of review our board agreements, communication to and from the board. And then also I've handed out just off of the IASB website, the code of conduct for all board members, just as a good reminder. I'm trying to think what was the. But I think one of the points is that, all communication to the board should come through the superintendent, and all communication out to staff should come back through the superintendent, correct? Is that one of the issues we've had?
That is certainly, the chain of command that we use.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about our board agreements or any recommendations for change?
I'm just trying to figure out what drove this to come before the board today again. Have we seen some inconsistencies or
No,
anything that kind of stands
I
out?
think it was some communication, kind of going around protocol to get to the board. We want to make sure that we're clear that things are coming to the board from the superintendent. So, and then just the only other thing I was thinking on the code of conduct was, I think we're going to have a lot of tough decisions and votes coming up here. And one of the things, the one that I was focused on was just that everybody abide by the majority of decisions of the board. I think if we're going to go down the road to a referendum, the community is going to be looking to the board to see that we're in lockstep, and it may not be unanimous, but I think what we have to all abide by the majority of the board. So just kind of a good reminder. So nothing more than that.
I think what you're saying though, I mean, if people send things to the wrong people, I mean, that's on them. We can't do anything about that. So what you're saying is our response to that.
Right.
And
that we won't that
right.
That unless communication to the board and staff, whoever comes, unless it comes through the superintendent, I don't think it's the board's responsibility to act on it.
Okay, even if you say that this is the responsibility of the superintendent, because I have answered just one thing recently that way, that this is the responsibility of the superintendent, and that's how I answered it. But yeah, but I probably should have copied you on it, which I didn't do, but that's what it said.
And that's what I do.
Yeah.
I put the chain of command, even
Right.
if it's somebody in the community, I explain the chain of command, and then I go ahead and forward it to Nelson and Carol with an FYI, just so you know. That seems to be working.
I think oftentimes, it can be frustrating in my position. There's concerns out there and no one has come to me, or no one's come to anybody in my cabinet. And we would like the opportunity to address it first, because eventually what you do is just send it back to me anyway. So it just gives an opportunity for us to address it first.
I think there are two things here, because I think that there's some things that have come before us. And as I stated before in conversation, is that, do people really, and we address this, I'm not going to go into all of that, but I think that if we move towards a code of conduct, because people are going to come to board members, and, it may be conversation, it may be something that we may even advise and say, well, that might be something you want to talk to the superintendent. And maybe they would not under any other circumstances, only because they're friends or they know us from the community, make that statement where we can actually readdress it and say, that's a superintendent issue. You may want to talk to her or her staff and let them know that that's an issue. The other piece of it is the issues that deal with appropriate protocol through personnel policies and procedures, which I think just like we get the code of conduct for board members, and as I stated before, do we sometimes we need to refresh at that level on protocol as well, so that things that should be driven to the superintendent, that it is driven in appropriate manner. But there's also a piece there that also allows for things to be addressed or not addressed by the board. And I think that we owe it to make sure that those processes are tight, so that we do maintain due process for staff as well, because they're not separated from us. We're part of a process, and I think that we need to understand, and we've had these conversations in some part, what those processes, and that they're aware of what those processes are, so that we can do due diligence as a board as well. So I'm okay with the code of conduct, but I'm also saying let's refresh, along the line of personnel policy, to make sure the flip side of this knows what the protocol is and how to approach the board as well, because that's given. And I will support the superintendent in that manner, because I am for protocol. But when protocol is not followed, it does not allow us the opportunity to do due diligence. When protocol is followed, then it allows the superintendent to do her job. And if there's still question at that point, and it needs to be driven at a higher level, it is part of their process. And we will do due diligence as a board and make a concrete decision on the decisions that we're making here as well. So I get it.
Okay. Trying to thank you for leading what I was trying to get at. So, yeah.
Thank you, Nelson.
Next up, school board calendar visits.
We just included those in your extras category, and then we also included the extra one. Yeah, for those that would like to go and visit the buildings this time of year, there's a lot of really great activities that will be coming up towards the end of the year, so we want to make sure that you're included in those.
Your schools love it.
Okay. Okay, are there any other discussion topics?
Outside of the agenda?
What have you got?
Okay. I just wanted to just inform the board that over at Boltville Airport, I believe it's the 14th. It's the 14th Saturday. Somebody? No, it's Saturday. They having a Tuskegee kind of event going out there for kids and all of that, and free rides for kids. I'll send a flyer. I just got the flyer, okay? And I said about the opportunity, I'll get it out this evening. Get it to the superintendent, and you can share it. And come out, get free hot dogs and all of that stuff, okay? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Wow. But they just joined as a chapter out there, Tuskegee Airmen for teenagers and all of that. So give an opportunity and kind of go hand in hand with the aviation program. I'll send you guys a copy of that too, just the program. Okay. So, and again, I told you guys already where I stood with this. Okay. So, but I saw that. I said this would be a great opportunity if you can stop by once you look at the time frame. Just stop by and see what's going on out there. It's just sorry, last minute Mo. I'm just less surprised I didn't give it to you Friday night.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Is that any other discussion topics? Okay. Next, before we'll have public comment again, but just a notice for the board, we do have a need for closed session tonight. So we'll have that and then come back in and adjourn. So it wasn't on the agenda, but we do have a need. So we're going to do public comment, and then I'll get a motion to go in closed. So do we have any other public comment forms? Terry's good.
Can I, before you do that, Terry, hold on, Nelson. Terry, Superintendent, are we okay to go into closed session without being on the agenda? I just asked.
Yes.
Well, we should never take action. Oh, no action after. Got it. Okay.
Okay. A public comment regarding Mrs. Jones from, is it Shavonda? Next. Okay, please.
Good evening, everyone. Coming from the heart to reach the heart. For Mrs. Jones, if you all could really look deep down in your hearts to reconsider to let her remain in her position that she's in. She has been that solid rock for that school. My children have been through there, and I have children that are still going through there. And I've seen her to be not just a leader there, but to be a parent, someone that the teachers and the students look up to. And I have a daughter that is 21, which Ms. Jones have been there for 24 wonderful years. And it was so heartbreaking for my daughter to find this out, and she was away to school. And she said, I just can't believe it. So if you all can find within your hearts, and I know all of you all do have one, to let her remain there for the future, please
Thank you.
You have,
Well, first of all, no, I didn't turn the form in.
Okay.
Because when I heard the auditor's comments, and I heard the discussion by the board members, my questions were answered. I
fantastic.
appreciate the opportunity. You know, I love this school district also. I sent 2 or 3 kids through the school district. So I know the quality of instruction we got here. I know the type of administration we got here. And I know that everybody wants to do good, wants to do good for our school district. This is our home. Okay, my concern is that the playing field remains level.
You say you love, did you say you love the dome? Is that what I heard you say?
I love the dome also.
Oh, okay.
I love the dome also. I mean, you guys know how I feel about the dome. Don't destroy the dome. Yeah, really. That's a penalty.
Okay, so, so before I get a motion going to close, that'll be our last item. We will come back in here to adjourn since we're being filmed. I would say it will probably be 45 minutes, 30, 45 minutes, something like that. So, but there won't be any action items after we return other than adjourning. So, can I have a motion to go into closed session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mrs. Mitchell? Aye. Mrs. Root? Aye. Mr. Sawalish?
Aye.
Mrs. Walters?
Aye.
Mrs. Galbraith is an aye. Mr. Albrecht?
Aye. We are in close.
Yep, it is. So check, test 1, 2. Check, test 1, 2.
Okay.
No missing.
Yeah, there's.
We need the
We
secretary.
need the secretary. Secretary's here. We have a quorum, do we? Okay.
In a minute, otherwise.
I think I hear.
Yeah, we can-
Brenda, she's
We can all vote leave. Oh, I can't do that.
Okay, here she is.
here.
Look at that. Look at this. Look at
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, so moved. Yes.
Second.
Second. Third.
Who wants to go first?
Bill.
Bill
I
first.
thought Brenda said it.
Bill.
I'm giving it to Brenda,
Okay.
and Bill's getting second.
There are a lot
and
of
Okay.
eager people.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.
That's what the kids say. They like to watch the tapes.
Oh, yeah.
Good job, guys.
Yep. All right.
Oh, hey,
Oh,
let's fill out your,
Oh, Lord.
Oh, crap.
Let's stay here for an hour.
We have to